Grace to you and peace, and welcome to our midweek faith formation series, continuing the examination of stories that didn't make the felt board. This week we're looking at part of the story of Jacob and his wives, stories that you might have heard during Sunday school or during VBS. But we're going to focus in on details that the flannel graph makers managed to skip over. Tonight, we look at the story of Rachel and the household idols. We are deep in the family drama of Abraham and his descendants in the back half of Genesis, surrounded by other stories that did manage to make it up on the felt board. Abraham and Sarah beget Isaac, who marries Rebekah, and together they beget Esau and Jacob. And each generation has their own shocking episodes, some of which you may have learned about in your childhood. There's that whole business with Abraham almost sacrificing Isaac. And then there are other less common stories. How many times can one family try to pass off their wives as their sisters? But those are tales for a different time. What you need to know about this particular generation is this. Jacob is the second born. He came out clutching his brother Esau's heel. And normally those few crucial seconds between them would mean that Esau would inherit his father's blessing and most of the property. But working with his mother, Jacob tricks his older brother out of his birthright in exchange for a bowl of stew. Esau is exhausted from a hunt, and he comes back into the tent hungry, famished, and he looks at what his brother is cooking, and he says, "Give me a bowl of that red stuff." Jacob, being a rather clever trickster, offers to sell it to him. And Esau, in a fit of hunger, says, "What is my birthright to me? I'm about to perish from hunger." Genesis doesn't tell us whether or not this particular bowl of stew was actually worth the birthright. Meanwhile, Isaac, their father, is getting up in age and he's starting to lose his vision. And he tells Esau to go hunt and catch something to make a meal for them, and then as they dine, father will bless son. Rebekah overhears this discussion and comes up with a plan. If Jacob goes out and butchers some of the family lamb and makes a stew, he can wear the lamb pelt as a disguise, because after all, his brother is rather hairy, but his father is going blind. And that way, the old man won't know it's him. And Jacob can receive the blessing before his brother. Esau finds out after it's too late. He goes in to receive the blessing, and his father says, "What are you talking about? I already blessed you." And apparently this isn't a thing that can be repeated. Once it's done, and you can accidentally give it to the wrong person. So Esau, as anyone would, gets very angry, violently angry, and he chases his brother out of the camp. Jacob ends up taking shelter with a relative named Laban, and he falls in love with Laban's daughter, Rachel. He works for Laban for 7 years to earn Rachel's hand in marriage. The wedding day comes, and they go to consummate the union, but Laban pulls a fast one. The bride, hidden beneath the veil, is Rachel's sister, Leah. When Jacob finds out, he is furious. He also is angry. He says, "I worked for you for 7 years to earn Rachel's hand in marriage." And Laban says, "Oh, I got it. It's okay. Just spend your marital week with Leah and keep her as your wife. And then after you've finished spending a week consummating the marriage with her sister, then you can get Rachel. provided that after you marry Rachel as well, you work for me for another 7 years. Jerry Springer couldn't have dreamt it up better than this. So, of course, Jacob then works for Laban for another 7 years. And as the years pass, with Jacob working for his father-in-law, he begins to grow wealthy. He does very well for himself as a shepherd. With God's blessing, he's able to mate and breed sheep just the way he wants. Are striped sheep more valuable? He can make them striped. Are spotted sheep more valuable? He can make them spotted. Whatever he wants, God provides. And Laban and his sons begin to grow jealous of Jacob's success, and they begin scheming against him. The Lord commands Jacob to leave this deceitful household and to return to the land of your fathers where you were born, and I will be with you. And this brings us up to the story of Rachel and the household idols. Jacob and his family pack up to flee in secret, waiting for Laban to go out to shear his sheep in the field. And with her father away, as she's busy packing, Rachel sneaks into his tent and steals his household idols, the statues of the gods who would bring protection and prosperity to the family. It takes 3 days for Laban to come back in from the field and to learn that his daughters and grandkids have run away, have fled with his son-in-law. And Laban gives chase for 7 days before catching up to the family. The night before their confrontation, God warns Laban not to harm Jacob. So the father-in-law confronts the son-in-law to express his betrayal, and he says, "Very well. You had to leave because you were longing for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" The language here is significant. Rachel steals idols, statues of carved wood, but Laban comes searching for his gods. The writer knows the difference and expects the audience to know the difference, but Laban does not. Jacob protests and says, "I didn't take your stupid idols. Search. If you find them, the person who took them, on my word, will die." Laban searches frantically, rifling through everyone's tents. Rachel, fearing for her life, takes the stolen idols and hides them in the cushion that serves as her saddle. And having hidden the idols in the cushion, sits on top of them. When her dad comes to search, she says, "I can't get up, Dad. It's my time of the month." Laban accepts Rachel's claim and gives up his search. Leviticus will later explain that anywhere a menstruating woman sits becomes ritually unclean. Rachel's deception plays on this law that would be common knowledge to the hearers of the story. There are a few other similar stories in which tricksters use their parents' idols against them. Within the canon of Scripture, a similar story pops up in 1 Samuel. Saul is growing jealous of young upstart shepherd and future king David, who, by chapter 19, had earned great acclaim and had married into Saul's family, taking Michal, Saul's daughter, as his bride. Incensed, King Saul pursues David, who has fled to the company of the prophet Samuel. To help cover her husband's escape, Michal takes the household gods, and she hides them in the bed with a sheet and a few patches of goat's hair, and she passes it off as the young David. The guards come looking for David, and his wife says, "Oh, he's sick. See, he's here in bed. You can see him. Just don't disturb him. Let him rest." And the soldiers report back to King Saul, but the king angrily demands that David be brought to him anyway. And then the trickery is discovered. Outside of Scripture, different texts tell numerous stories of the young Abraham working in his father's idol shop, according to rabbinic interpretation based off of a passing reference in the book of Joshua. Abraham's father carved and sold idols. In most accounts, the young Abraham mocks both the false gods and the people who buy and worship them. But the best and the absolute funniest version of the story comes from a text called Genesis Rabbah, a series of explanations of and stories about the events in Genesis. In this particular story, Abram is left to mind the store. Seeing an opportunity, he smashes all of the idols but the largest one, and then he leaves his weapon at the base of the surviving statue. When his father returns and sees the mess, he yells at his son, "What happened here?" Abram responds, "Well, you see, Dad, someone brought in an offering to the gods, as they do, and the gods, they all started fighting over it. And then this big one over here, he took the stick and he just started smashing them. So it's all the gods' fault." And his dad responds, "You stupid boy, don't you know they're just wood and stone?" And Abraham says, "Aha! Exactly." This clever story doesn't actually work because Abram is then handed over to Nimrod, the king of Babel, to stand trial. Okay, funny stories about Abraham aside, what's going on? There's a lot in the story that's left unsaid, which means that we have some questions to ask of the text. First, why does Rachel take the idols? Commentators have debated this, with notable authors taking different positions. The first-century Jewish historian Josephus said Rachel took the idols so that she could use them as leverage to bargain with her father if she needed to say, "Dad, you want your statues back? You gotta let us go." 11th century French rabbi Rashi said that Rachel was trying to keep her father Laban from his sin of idolatry. But his Spanish contemporary Ibn Ezra disagreed, and he suggested that Rachel wanted to make sure that Laban couldn't pray to these gods to gain their favor in his pursuit of Jacob and family. Still others have suggested that Rachel's theft was meant to secure Jacob's place as the patriarch in the household, that by possessing these idols, he would then outrank Laban. We also don't get to know why her plan works. Is Laban being gentle, respecting his daughter's dignity? Or does the thought of a woman's period gross him out? Bound up in the answer is this other question. Is Rachel playing off of her father's sympathy? Does she know that he will act gently toward her? Or is she playing off of a sense of patriarchal legalism in which assumptions about the female body and ritual cleanliness aid her in her deception? Whatever the reason, we can say one thing with absolute certainty. She fits in with her family. Jacob plays the role of the trickster, a common stock character in stories from around the world. Think Brer Rabbit or Bugs Bunny. These characters use their cunning to make sure that they always have the upper hand, that they win no matter the outcome. Jacob uses his wits to deceive his brother and father, but then he meets his match in Laban, who tricks him into marrying Leah. Theirs is a battle for the ages, as Jacob's divine blessing goes head to head against Laban's constant reneging on promises. Trickster versus trickster. This is certainly Rachel's family. Here she is, the wife and the daughter of a trickster, using her own cunning to win the day.